Did you get it? Sorry about that. I was doing semaphore, in case you couldn't tell, because I'm not great at semaphore and I didn't have any flags. But I was trying to send you a message in semaphore. So if you know semaphore, maybe you just could work that out straight away anyway. If not, pause the video, rewind, get a semaphore decoding code. What? And try and work out what I just said. Why did we start today's Kids Church with semaphore? You might well ask. Well, here's why. We're thinking today about our actions and the things that we say through the things that we do. So that's where we're gonna end up. But before we do that, I would love to just recap on last week. Because we've just started this new series. This is week 2. So last week we began to think about what it was going to look like to follow Jesus, what it was going to be like to live God's way. And we had a story. Can you remember, this is question number 1, can you remember in our story what was wrong with the man that came to Jesus? So we met a man, he had a pretty serious problem. Can you remember what it was? Question 1. Question 2, what did he bring to Jesus? Question 3, what did we learn from that man about the way that we come to Jesus? Now, you might want to chat about those questions, reflect, remind each other. If so, fine, pause the video. If not, I'm going to tell you the answers, or at least the beginnings of the answers, because, you know, you might want to chat on. But first of all, the man had leprosy. He had a really nasty skin disease called leprosy. And that was why he came to Jesus, because he really wanted Jesus to heal him. He came with, trick question, nothing. He had nothing. He fell on his knees and he asked Jesus to help him. Third question, we thought about what we could learn from him. And we remembered that at the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the ones that come with nothing." They know they come with nothing. And they fall on their knees before Jesus and they say, "Lord Jesus, I need you." Blessed are those people. And that's a lesson for us as we think about how we come to Jesus. We come and we fall on our knees and we say, "Lord Jesus, we need you." So that was the very start of this series on Kingdom Living. Actually, we come and we just say, "Lord Jesus, we need you." And that's a really helpful thing to remember as we look in the next few weeks at how we're going to live in response to what Jesus has done for us and who Jesus is. So let's get on then to the next part of our series. And if you remember, we're thinking about our actions. Before we do that, I'm going to just go and get a helper, and I'm going to, is it a game? I'm going to just get my helper. Okay, I've enlisted the help of George.
Hi.
George Willis. What we're going to do is we're going to blindfold George. And then we're going to make him taste some stuff. Okay, so the first thing to do is to blindfold him. Let's get come Sally. Now, I've got 3 things for George to taste, and I'm going to give him a spoon, and he's just going to dip the spoon, and George's got to try and tell me what he thinks they are.
You're pulling it off my eyes.
And specifically, what I'm interested to know is which is the odd one out. Okay? You ready? Oh, different reasons. Okay, here we go. So, here's the first one. Just take the spoon. Ooh, I wouldn't put just a little bit. I'll do it. There you go. Ready?
Sugar.
Oh, sugar. Okay. So that's sugar. Ready?
Honey.
Oh, yeah, very good. Ready?
Ugh.
yes. Salt, indeed. Which one was the odd one out? Would you say?
The salt, it was the only one that wasn't sugary. Or you could say the honey because it was the only one that wasn't ingrained.
Yes, true. I know. I thought that when I gave it to you. I thought, oh, the honey is the sticky one here. But the salt was the only one that made you go, blech, wasn't it? Okay, very good. Thanks very much, George. Well done.
Bye.
Good old George. Bless him. Now, why did I just make my son try some salt on a spoon? That was a bit mean, wasn't it? Salt's a funny thing, isn't it? Because what we're going to find out in a minute is that Jesus tells us we're meant to be like salt. That's the first thing he tells us we're meant to be like. He also tells us that we're meant to be like light. Well, maybe that makes a bit more sense. Maybe we kind of see where that is going. So I'm going to read that to you in just a moment. But before I do that, I want you to have a little think about salt. So it was interesting, wasn't it, when George went, blech? Because when you eat salt, just on a spoon, just so that you know, I didn't give him loads of salt. Don't worry, don't start like reporting me. He's a little host. But we're not meant to eat salt like that, are we? Blech, it is disgusting. But if you've ever been round to my house and had some of my special soup, you will know that soup without salt is a bit bland. I quite often forget to add the salt. In fact, I often get accused of just like massively undersalting food in this house. And then what happens is Nick gets the salt and he like massively oversalts his food. The point is that food without salt in it, even if it's just a little bit, tastes rubbish, like quite bland very often. So salt is meant to be mixed in with the food to make it taste better. That's one thing that salt can do. I wonder if there's something else that you know about that salt can do. Have a little think about that, perhaps, whilst I get the story ready. So I'm going to read today from this one. This is the Barnabas Children's Bible. And we're carrying on, though, in Matthew. So we started off last week looking at the Sermon on the Mount, which is in Matthew chapter 6, and we're still in Matthew chapter 6, but I'm just going to read it from a slightly different version. Okay? So, Jesus is still up on the mountain, and he's still talking to his disciples about living God's way. And he says this: if you follow God's ways, you'll be like a little salt in the cooking pot, making the whole meal taste good. Or like a lamp shining brightly in a dark place, bringing light so that all can see. So 2 things: you'll be like a little salt in the cooking pot, making the whole meal taste good. Or like a lamp shining brightly in a dark place, so that all can see. You might have heard people talking about that before, about Christians being salt and light. That's where it comes from Matthew chapter 6, and Jesus speaking in the Sermon on the Mount. Well, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Especially when you think back to George's bleh reaction. But salt is really important. It's not like anything else. So did you notice the first 2 things that George tasted, he thought, yummy sugar, yummy honey. And they were quite similar. Both sweet, both quite easy to eat, yummy, yummy. Salt was totally different. It's really distinctive. And that's why you notice when something doesn't have salt in it. Bread without salt, blech. Even cakes without a pinch of salt don't taste as good. Did you know that? You're supposed to add a pinch of salt to your cakes. Because salt works. It's got a job to do, and its job is to make everything taste better. A bit like light. Light's got a job to do. We don't look at the light on its own, don't we? Do we? We don't sit and stare at our lamps. But the lamp has a really important job to do. It helps us to see everything else. So if we switch all our lamps off, we can't read our books or play our games or see our friends and family sitting around, play the piano, whatever it is we want to do. So salt and light, on their own, they're not much good, but they have a really important job to do to make other things better. And that's what Jesus says we're meant to be like as Christians. So actually, we've got a job to do to make the world a better place. Time for a quick semaphore challenge interlude. Right, what you need to do is this. Find yourself semaphore online. Get some help to find this. Or maybe you've got it in a book. This gives you all the different signals that you can make to make up words. Now, if you've got flags, that's even better. And then you can like really, apparently that's what you're supposed to use, flags. I didn't have any flags. Also, apologies if my message didn't actually make sense earlier because I'm really not very good at semaphore. But anyway, what am I saying here? So, my challenge to you is to send each other a semaphore message. Okay? So you need, obviously, to take it in turns to send and to receive. As you receive, you might want a pen and paper to write down what somebody's saying to you. Over to you. Okay, we are going to dig in a little bit more into our Bible passage. And I've got some questions for you to think about. Question, first of all, I'm going to concentrate on salt, really, for now. So just remind yourselves what salt does. Remind yourself what the job of salt is. I did actually ask you at the beginning if you knew of another thing that salt can do. Now, we've been studying Egyptians in our house this term with year 3. And so we used salt to mummify, yes, a pepper. That's right, we mummified a pepper using salt. So salt also has preservative qualities. In other words, it stops things from going bad. It can stop food from going bad. So you can add it to meat or to other things like that to stop them from... So that's just to add to your conversation there. There's another thing that salt can do. Now, the second question and the more interesting, juicy question is, why do you think Jesus uses that picture to tell his disciples what he wants them to be like? What is it about that picture that is a good way of helping his disciples understand what he wants them to do? And thirdly, which is a bit similar, how might you be like salt in your situation, whatever that might be? And some of us are thinking about going back to school. Some of us might be thinking about going back to work, or just getting out and about again, maybe seeing some people again that we haven't seen for a while. What is it going to look like for us to be like salt? Now, think about the actions that you've just been doing, your semaphore actions. So we're thinking, what actions are we going to do? Well, how are we going to behave to show what Jesus is like? So those are some questions for you to think about. Feel free to pause, discuss, and join me again in a moment. Let's just think about then how we're going to respond to what we've been talking about this morning. I've got a few options for you. Option number 1 is to make yourself a flame collage. So I've cut out the shape here of a frame. And round the edge, just written the verse, "Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." Matthew 5:16. I said Matthew 6 earlier, and I can only apologise. We are, of course, in Matthew 5. And then in the middle of your flame, perhaps you could write down some of the things that you've been talking about to do with the way in which you are going to show Jesus in your actions, to be salt and light, if you like. And if there's several of you in a household together, you could add those into one big flame collage of the different things that you have talked about this morning. That's one option. Another is that you might like to get out your little candles from last week. So if you put a candle into your pot, this would be a great time to get those out again and light those as you pray through some of the things that you've talked about and commit those to God, the things that you want to do for him, to point others to him. And finally, and this one is my favourite, why not go and make some bread? And as you add your salt and you think about what it's going to do, the job it's going to do in that bread to make it yummy, you can be thinking and praying about the way in which you are going to be like salt this week. And then as you taste the bread and enjoy it later on, you can think, this bread tastes good, and it tastes so much better because of that salt, that it's doing its job. It's really working to make this a delicious loaf of bread. So those are some little options for you as you think about applying this teaching to your lives this week. I hope you have a lovely week. We will see you next week, and I'm not sure what it's going to be next week, so that's exciting, isn't it? Maybe you could read on ahead in Matthew 5. Take care. Enjoy being salt and light.